listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast no longer from the film magazine. Sam had a really good one last week, and I could have just copied, but I didn't. Anyway, we're a podcast. We talk about topics in movie, film theory, criticism, history, etc. What else we feel like. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who wore pink for the princesses.
I'm Sam. This podcast is going to make a man out of me.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one who is probably the closest to living in the woods with the forest creatures.
Yeah, do they come right up to your door, or do you sing along to them?
Not singing along, but we do have kind of buzzers at the back, and occasionally you do kind of wander around and see the occasional fox run off and skitter off into the woods, and quite a few badgers and
do your
rabbits.
Dishes.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah. Well, today we're talking about Disney princesses, and hey, go check out Sam's Cinderella anniversary article at our Substack at Second Cut Pod at substack.com.
That's the important one, yeah.
And what's the other reason we're doing it, guys?
The other reason we're doing it is because Disney have released their latest live-action reimagining of an animated classic, Snow White.
I was going to say,
not Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, this one. It's just Snow White, or Disney's Snow White for some reason.
Following on from Doctor Who renaming the Celestial Toymaker from the 60s as the Toymaker, because Celestial was occasionally could be used as a racial slur to somebody with Asian ethnicity, apparently. And I'm just like, yeah, but it also means from the stars. So why are we doing this?
Y'all have some really interesting racism in the UK. Celestial, if it's a slur, it sounds like it would be in like a D&D sort of realm.
Yep. But apparently it was a thing, so they decided to rename a classic Doctor Who villain that had appeared in one serial from the 60s when they brought him back for the 60th anniversary. They decided to rename that character as just the Toymaker, and I'm like, but Celestial also kind of was obviously meaning from the stars, and I'm sure anybody that's kind of intelligent enough to know that it could be a slur, because it's not a common one, put it that way.
That's
even
a
in
racism
Britain,
deep cut.
Yeah, it kind of is, and anybody that's kind of able to understand that would probably also understand that he's a being from another dimension, and therefore it also kind of, you know what I mean, like. Yeah. If you like saying the Men in Black, we can't call them that anymore. We have to call them the men in slightly dark clothing. So
it's a good thing being problematic is good for the algorithm. It's like it's picking up everything we're saying about those Celestials.
Yeah, but apparently being problematic doesn't stop Disney releasing its films. And then when you get
what's
films
new?
When you get films that are slightly too woke or essentially not incredibly right wing, Warner Brothers shelves them.
This is the latest in a long line of films that's basically it's a controversy even long before it's released. You know, it's been I think it was on the chopping block from back when it was announced, basically. You know, so it starts with oh there goes Disney, out of ideas, remaking their classics again, and then it was casting Rachel Zegler because people objected to a Latina actress, playing a character called Snow White, and then it was Gal Gadot and her political associations, and it's just been one thing after. And there's what they're doing with the dwarfs, and people have already kind of just silent scene kind of decide this is going to be bad. Though obviously I've not seen it yet. I'm probably not going to see it in the cinema because I don't see these live action remakes in the cinema. I don't really see the point. I'll see it at some point, but it's meant to be okay from what I've heard so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I waited to see the last one, Little Mermaid, on Disney Plus. I'm so glad I did, because God, I would have been miserable watching that in the cinema.
I still haven't seen it because I'm just like, why are we doing this? Like,
yeah,
it's because it makes money. But did Little Mermaid make any money?
Probably. Well,
I'm now going to check this. Yeah, this is the kind of thing which
I presume the only reason they keep making these is because they're making money. I mean,
I was going to say, well, yeah, is it Beauty and the Beast or Cinderella? It's Beauty and the Beast, isn't it, with Emma Watson that
Yeah.
I did at some point. That was like it's still in like the top 20 most profitable films of all time,
That's true.
or kind of top grossing, not adjusted for inflation. I think I saw something that the first one I'm going to look at, Snow White, adjusted for inflation, is over 2 billion. So
and the Lion King remake as well, with the Lion King, which is not a live action remake. There's nothing live action about it. The CG animated remake of the Lion King is also in. I think
like I'm very
live
happy
passing.
Like, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm very happy to report that I think as of this week just gone, although I'm now going to have to check because I can't believe it in my head. Oh, no, it isn't anymore. I think this week just gone was the first week in my nearest I can get multiplex, which is 8 screens. So it's not massive. We get most of the big releases. Occasionally, if it's a smaller release like a horror film, maybe you'll get to perhaps 3 showings a week, but like a week, and then it will vanish. So like Ke Huy Kwan's last film was out for a week and then vanished from it. But Mufasa was in there for about 4 months. Like, it may only have been like 1 screening a day and then maybe 2 on a Saturday, but 4 months, and like other blockbusters like just vanished, and I'm like, I do not understand it. But if they're still making money, they're still making money. And if there's one thing that anybody in the box office knows, is that if it's a kids film, you have a damn good chance of it continuing to play, especially if you're over half term. I said this before when I worked at the cinema in Newtown, the local one. It's 2 screens, small, independent. There's like a 30-seater screening and then like a 120-seater screening. So not big. You can get maybe 4 films a day shown. And when we were opening back during the summer of 2021, essentially Peter Rabbit 2 kept the place open. Like, genuinely, because everyone would come in during half terms. Once or twice there was a school trip and Peter Rabbit 2 would be shown. We'd pack out the place with like 30, 40 school kids. If in doubt, bank on a kids film.
I mean, a Peter Rabbit, a Paddington, a Minions movie. Just they really do keep like places afloat, don't they, during the school holidays?
The good thing about kids movies is, at minimum, you're getting 2 tickets out of it, like guaranteed, because the kid can't go alone.
Yeah. I mean, ironically enough, it's weird that for cinema, if in doubt, make a kids film or re-show a kids film, as the case may be. As you see quite often, the multiplexes do like on a Saturday, like a movie for juniors, kind of in the morning, kind of thing. Maybe when the dad gets them as for the weekend kind of thing. You need something to do.
I like how Kira jumps straight to divorce. Dads taking the kids.
No, I say this because my brother-in-law is a McDonald's branch manager, and he says, even on Christmas Day, like, there are kind of single parents that will kind of have the kids for 1 or 2 days and bring them into McDonald's even on Christmas Day. That's why they're open on Christmas. It's like, who takes their bloody kids to McDonald's on Christmas? That's quite a lot of the things that would
people
happen.
Who can't be bothered cooking turkey.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is I find it hilarious that in kind of the cinema world now, if in doubt, you bank on a kids film. If you're in the 1600s and the 1700s in the theatre,
I don't think they had movies back then, Kieran.
No, but you'd bank on Macbeth, of all things, because Macbeth is an almost guaranteed draw, and that's one of the reasons why Macbeth has the curse. Because if a theatre was doing badly and needed money quick, you put on a production of Macbeth, and 9 times out of 10, you'd be able to float for a while.
Because it's short and it's a thriller, essentially.
Sure. Yeah, so there are just some things which, if in doubt, have got a decent chance to make the money. Apparently, Warner Brothers doesn't think any of its films will actually make any money, but what's that to say? Although, did I see that somebody is trying to buy the Wild E. Coyote versus Acme film?
Yes, yes. So the new Looney Tunes film that somehow actually escaped the vault, actually got a release, is doing all right. So, and the same company that bought that off of Warner Brothers have now gone to them and said, "Oh yeah, we'll have Wild E. Coyote, we'll have a Coyote versus Acme."
Do they want to try and get? Was it Batwoman or Catwoman? What was the film? Is it Batwoman? The Batgirl, wasn't it?
Batgirl, yeah.
Yeah, and just get all
Yeah.
those out as well. I don't understand. They're doing it as a tax
no,
write-off, but if a company, somebody's going to buy it for 50
I
mil,
think,
like,
yeah, I think Batgirl's a slightly different thing. I think that cannot be released because they've taken the tax write-off from it. So it's whereas I think Coyote, I think they just put it in a vault basically and chose not to.
so if we've got to wait for another 75 years to see Batgirl.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. But back on the topic.
Same age as Cinderella.
Back on the topic of
speaking of things that make a lot of money, the Disney princess brands.
The Disney princess, and we can get to our actual discussion of what it is, but I wanted to give the official idea of what the Disney princess is.
Is this before the film theory definitions of Disney princesses?
Yeah, before we, expand it to like Alien. Because I like there is a very specific, like, what is a Disney princess? You go to princess.disney.com and you can see the full list. It is Cinderella, Tiana, Ariel, Rapunzel, Moana, Snow White, Aurora, Jasmine, Mulan, Merida? Is it Merida or Merida? Merida.
Yeah.
Belle, Pocahontas, and Raya. That is the official list. Former princesses, when the idea was first created, are Tinkerbell and Esmeralda. So the Disney princess brand, the former Nike executive Andy Mooney, he came to Walt Disney and decided to make Disney princesses a brand. So what is a Disney princess? It is a marketing tool. It sells shoes. It sells dolls. Look at the Disney Princess website. You could shop by character. You could shop by movie. There's videos on there. There's recipes from Disney princesses, wallpapers.
You've got the meet and greets, when you go to the theme parks, all that, it's a big old thing.
I found this is a blog called Disney Through the Decades, and their source for this is a page that is now down, but they have listed the criteria for Disney princess. This is from 2018. So this is how a Disney princess is supposedly determined, or these are criteria that all of them meet at the bare minimum. The heroine must have human-like qualities. The heroine must star in a Disney animated film. The heroine must not be introduced through a sequel. The heroine must be a princess by blood, marry into a royal family, or show exceptional heroism. And the heroine's film must be a commercial success. And I think also they have some sort of animal companion, may be an unofficial requirement.
Yeah. I mean, shall I go?
That's from Moana.
I was going to bring in Moana. I was going to bring in Maui's. Maui's definition is: you wear a dress and talk to animals. You're a princess.
Yes, exactly.
I seem to remember years ago, film theory, the laugh and bane of all our existences, because it's a load of fun, but at the same time can completely wreck stuff, a bit like Cinema Sins. You take it as a laugh, and at the same time it does have detrimental stuff. But I seem to remember him going, if all these things are the case, why does because he was talking about it when Wreck-It Ralph 2 came out, which I haven't seen. I've seen the first one. I think I would have seen it in cinema.
Wreck-It Ralph 2's got the scene where all the princesses are together in the same.
And he was going, why does Vanellope von Schweetz, or whatever her name is, not count as a Disney princess? And then he also goes, and I think you did the Black Cauldron at some point.
Yes.
I haven't seen it. I haven't even read the Chronicles of Prydain, although I've read the Mabinogion. But you've got the princess in that, Eilonwy, I believe. Again, I haven't seen it.
Eilonwy, I think.
I was going to say, who actually isn't in the original Mabinogion.
Well, I have something fun, Kieran.
She's in a Disney movie. She's a princess by blood. Why does she not count? And he went, I reckon part of it is because it has to make a certain amount of money.
Yes, commercial failure.
Massive old flop.
If you go to the Disney Princess.fandom list of Disney princesses, it addresses every exclusion. It is the longest, most absurd article.
So Meg from Hercules, then, is that just because she's not royal?
And she, there was another reason. Hang on, let me go back to the criteria.
Although
she does
isn't
not
Meg from
star in
Hercules
it.
related to like Oedipus?
Is she?
I mean,
She's
in the
Hercules'
Greek-
mom, isn't she?
In the Greek myths, Meg is she's one of the Furies, isn't she? I think.
In Greek mythology, Megara is Hercules' first wife, the eldest daughter of Creon, king of Thebes. So daughter of a king. She is a princess in original mythology.
Yeah, but that's not referenced in the animation at all.
No, so they decided, you know what, we're going to make her not a Disney princess anymore.
What? Yeah. She also is not the star, and I think that's why I'm pretty sure Jasmine is not included. That's why she would not be included in the official Disney marketing list.
Yeah, I think that's a fall with the Aladdin thing. So I think she's not a title character, but it's probably just as much her story as it is Aladdin's story.
She is included in the list, though. By the way,
included in that list. By the way,
no, they are not. Now, in the Disney Princess Wiki, they are listed as honorary princesses, but they are not listed among Disney's official.
Because here's the thing: if you ask anybody, pretty much on the street of Disney princesses, you'll name off Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, but probably Elsa and Anna will be there at some point. I mean, maybe it's because
they're both royal.
They're both royal. Maybe it's because Elsa becomes queen and therefore that. But then, like,
so does Anna. Spoilers.
We have music. Yeah, but that's in Frozen 2, which obviously doesn't count in order for the branding according to the official rules. But Anna therefore is like next in line to the throne and therefore technically a princess, even if Elsa isn't. So how does that work? I don't.
Well, neither of them are official Disney princesses, but guys, I mean, let's argue here. Do we think that the alien queen counts as a Disney princess? Should Princess Leia count? And this is an ought.
The
this
alien
is
queen
obviously
cannot
not
because
an
it's introduced in a sequel.
Yeah.
There you go.
Princess Leia could, couldn't she?
She doesn't. I guess is Chewbacca an animal companion?
I was thinking that, yeah. No, let's be honest. I think Han Solo is the animal companion.
Yeah, Han Solo's the animal companion. Yes. Kieran mind meld right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What else are they taking over? Like, okay, Predator doesn't count.
Shuri does not count officially. But should these people, should they be more inclusive of what a Disney princess is?
Yeah. I mean,
we've not.
She becomes a king, but Elizabeth Swann.
Yeah, that is the weakness for all this. Do they have to have been in a Disney animated film? We're obviously dipping into the other properties owned by Disney, but they're live action, aren't they?
Yes.
I think the only princess that's been introduced for the first time in live action would be Amy Adams in Enchanted, wouldn't it? Whatever she was called.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Fun fact, I was kept home from a field trip to go see that movie in a theater because I was a bad child.
How awful. Was that your punishment? Go watch a movie in the cinemas. Why do I never get that? My punishment would have been to go on the field trip.
Lucky you.
What was the field trip?
To go see the movie in theaters. I don't know why. I mean, probably because American schools are lazy and we teach through film.
I mean, we in primary schools used to teach through theatre that every kind of year there was a theatre trip. Normally for a Roald Dahl adaptation.
Oh God, yeah. We got dragged to see Cats one year. That was
God. Well, at least it didn't
terrifying.
It was before it went downhill that much. Yeah, no, I got dragged to George's Marvelous Medicine at one point. I think I got dragged to a James. It might have been James the Giant Fish. No, what's the one with the chickens where they put the caps on them? The Roald Dahl story. I can't remember. But I seem to remember one of them. It was like 10 minutes before the end, and we had to get ushered out because we'd missed the bus. It's like, what is your stupid planning and timing? What? Look at that. Anyway, we should stop going on about our school trips. None of them would see.
You only live twice. That's what you were thinking of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well,
Kieran, we
other
talked
films created by racists. Sorry.
we talked about oh my god, that movie is man. Anyway, go listen to our James Bond episode.
Yep.
Kieran, talk to us about Snow White and the Seven Dwarves (1937) because now we have to clarify.
No, we don't. If you call it Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because the next one is Snow
You're not
White.
wrong.
Amazingly, somehow we've already covered off one of the initial comments about this, because one of the things that people think is that this is the first feature-length animated film, and of course it isn't, because we did an episode on underappreciated animated films. And along with, was it Felix the Cat we did, and the King and the Mockingbird,
which I think it is. Felix the Cat is definitely probably the first adult.
Yeah,
kind of
animated
feature.
That was the porn cat movie, right?
Yeah, that you suggested. Yeah,
Yes.
and
I think Sam suggested it. It was not me.
We did the King and the Mockingbird. No, you suggested it, but I essentially told you to do Prince Ahmed, the Lotte Reiniger film, which was the first kind of animated feature film. I don't think it was released or widely released back then, though.
Disney still like to make the claim, don't they? It's the first one, but it just isn't at no level, is it?
They like to make the claim, regardless of the fact that they essentially Lotte Reiniger kind of for that, although for other things, pioneered the use of the multiplane camera technique, which is essentially you keep a camera locked pointing down, you put 4 panes of glass like that at intervals so they all look staggered away from each other, and then you can move each kind of pane of glass independently in order to create the idea of movement and tracking shots, with a background moving slower than the foreground movement in order to create kind of movement and depth and kind of tracking shots. Disney would obviously Adventures of Prince Ahmed was 1926, and then this Snow White was 1937, so there's 11 years after that. So kind of you have people kind of experimenting with it. Bertolt Bartosz, who worked with Reiniger, kind of used a similar idea for l'idée, the idea in 32. And then you get to other people kind of doing bits and pieces. So there's an animator called Ube Iwerks, kind of taking the multiplane camera and doing other things with it. And obviously Disney have been using kind of similar stuff, especially for their silly symphonies, which is realistically, when people go, oh, Disney has all these wins, a lot of them are for the fact that pretty much every animated feature for about 13 or animated kind of short for 13 years solid, it was just a different Disney silly symphony going on and on and on as it went on, which is essentially them going, oh, we can have synchronized sound, let's do animated shorts, and then any film going, we essentially shove one of these shorts before it so that everyone sees it. And I will say to Disney, they are one of the only companies that will still put, at least fairly often, a short animated film before their main feature, which I think if more people did that, shorts would be very much appreciated.
I mean, the whole point of Disney kind of making the pivot to feature animation was to kind of elevate the art form to be taken seriously, and to get past that idea that a cartoon was just something short and disposable you could forget about.
Because in developing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it went through quite a bit of development and things like that. So the initially in 1934, you had one of the symphonies called it's the Garden Goddess of the Garden, something like that. With essentially retelling
Goddess of Spring, something like that.
That's the one, yeah. I literally watched it about an hour ago and forgot the name, or rewatched it, because guess what I did an essay on in third year, Disney Silly Symphonies. So I was really annoyed when I couldn't then say that I was doing a Mickey Mouse degree, which is the common thing. Oh, you're doing film, it's a Mickey Mouse degree. No, I'm not. You've done an essay on Disney. Damn. So they did the Goddess of Spring as kind of a test. I mean, Walt Disney had been kind of considering doing a feature-length animation for a while, and Snow White was one of the possible ideas. Apparently, other ideas floated at him were Gulliver's Travels, and ironically enough, one of the pitches possibly was doing versions of the Iliad and the Odyssey, which would be interesting. I'd love to see that Disney's The Odyssey going up against Nolan's coming out with. I think, as far as I can work out, everybody in Hollywood is in that film at the moment. So they're testing that out, and it was kind of delayed for a few years after 34 because they weren't incredibly convinced with the kind of way that they'd animated Persephone and the Goddess of Spring. And you get to when you get to 37, talking about this multiplane camera stuff, there's a more advanced version of it, kind of just a little bit more sophisticated, that they test out in another silly symphonies called The Old Mill. And that's an interesting one. It's very nicely done. There's kind of no dialogue in that one or singing or anything like that. It is all just the animation and the music to go with it. But it's proper old Disney. Just even if you don't agree with a lot of the kind of political stuff of Disney and his views and things like that, some of the early stuff, the animation is gorgeous. And I think even is it Miyazaki or Tolkien? Because I know Tolkien essentially said nobody shall allow Disney to use any of my kind of works. I'm banning them. And obviously Miyazaki has got the connection with Disney because Disney have the worldwide distribution rights to Ghibli films. One of them goes, and again, I can't remember who it is. I know it's one of the two because of those connections, but essentially went, the last good thing they did was Fantasia, which at least was interesting and checking other things out. So this is obviously before Fantasia. Fantasia's 1940, 41. But all this stuff just looks absolutely just splendid and gorgeous. So that's The Old Mill, and The Old Mill came out in 37 and typically won the animated short. So it's just Disney racking up the Oscars. Hilariously enough, I will say very quickly whilst I'm on the front of the Oscars before I go into the film as a whole, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs did not win an Oscar, but he was given one the following year, Walt Disney, for kind of working on the film as almost a kind of contribution to cinema kind of thing. And they gave him a very special Oscar. They gave him 7 mini dwarf Oscar statuettes, which is just why do we not do that more often? Like, I would have loved to see one, like, if for example, if
Mikey Madsen's twerked, is that what you were gonna say?
Well, I was thinking more if Coralie Fajot got one for the substance, and you kind of have two, and one of them stuck to the back of another one crawling out, like something like a little bit ridiculous and fun.
A little bit of creativity.
Yeah,
like a sprayed gold Monstro Liza Sue.
Guys, Kieran stayed up until like what 4 a.m. his time watching the Oscars to write for you. Like, give him some fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, and flipping Demi Moore didn't even win. It was very depressing.
We just heard the name The Substance several times and had one trailer, and that's it.
And Makeup got it. It got it from Makeup, and that's about it. But
I didn't remember that, so thank you for remembering.
That was the one it won. The fact it got nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and best original screenplay as well is irrelevant because obviously they don't like horror at the Oscars. Anyway, going back to this, so yeah, they kind of been experimenting with stuff, and so this Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs takes a while to properly get into production. Again, bear in mind that cinema is 40. Well, if they start developing it in 34, it's not even 40 years old at that point, you know. And it's come from literally, oh my gosh, we've invented how to take moving pictures and show them again, to we are now doing an hour and a half multi-plane, Technicolor, sound synchronized animation. It's and I think a lot of people, even us, kind of don't appreciate the massive technological jump from the mere idea of. I mean, even like this conversation, we would not be having it without the Lumiere brothers. Like, it's just, and this is like 130 odd years ago. This year, it's just the actual kind of change in technology is staggering and insane. You know, if it was like the 130 years and like the 600s, the 700s AD, not much changes. The last 130 years, it's absolute, it's madness. So you've got to kind of put ourselves in that perspective that this is, even though people have done multiplane camera animation before, this is still groundbreaking work. As much as we might have a go at the depiction of Snow White in this as a passive female, blah blah blah, isn't good. And yeah, it was 1937, started developing 1934 by somebody who was essentially very much going, Nazis aren't that bad. There are stuff that we can take issue with, but the animating technology itself is genuinely astonishing. One of the interesting thing I also again, going into the background, is that in order to kind of get the flow and the kind of animation style for Snow White, one of the guiding principles was that they were using a hell of a lot of real life references and essentially kind of taking the footage and almost drawing the outlines kind of frame by frame.
But it's slightly different to actual rotoscoping. The animators weren't literally tracing over like the film stop, but they were, as you say, so closely referencing their live action kind of footage that a lot of people think, oh, you must have just traced it, but which kind of makes it a bit kind of jarring when you have like these realistically proportioned characters sharing the same space with like a more cartoony kind of creation. It's a little bit strange, but
the thing I loved is that people, I'm not sure if Disney termed this, but other people have termed it hyper real kind of animation style, which is interesting because if you then forward 45, 50 years and you get to Simulacra and Simulation, Baudrillard discusses Disneyland specifically as an example of his concept of the hyper real. So it's just like, I was just looking at that going, wait, what? Like, we got this kind of terminology coming back, the idea that something is more real than real. And kind of one of the reasons for thinking of doing it in that way is essentially people were thinking, and especially Disney and probably some of his execs and things like that as well, were going, you've got to kind of make it as real as possible in order to engage people. They won't connect with something that doesn't seem lifelike in some way. So you've got to get it as lifelike as possible in order to give the audience something to engage with. Even when bringing something like this out, essentially a lot of the execs and a lot of the distributors and a lot of the fuss in the papers and the trade magazines at the time were essentially going, this is never going to work. One, how are you going to sustain interest in a fairy tale for 80, 83, however many minutes it is? It's around there. Two, the Technicolor pop, it's going to be too bright on the eyes for people to be able to put up with. 10, 15 minutes of a short film you can get away with. 80 minutes? No, it's going to absolutely destroy people's eyes. They're not going to be able to put up with it. And it's
hilarious that the objection is people couldn't pay attention to a fairy tale. What were movies made from before 1934? It was fairy tales and books and
but I think specifically drawing on like it's not Hans Christian Andersen, it's Grimm's fairy tale, isn't it? Snow White.
Grimm,
the two they're drawn from both, so I forget which one is from which, but just the idea that there were so many people going, you can't make this short fairy tale an 80-minute Technicolor animated film. It just won't work. You can't do it. People won't be able to connect with it or anything like that. How are you going to... Anyway, Snow White, the Seven Dwarfs, there was a lot of changes that went in when kind of developing it and making it. There are so many drafts where they come up with different versions of stuff. And different little kind of essentially early manuscripts. I found the earliest one was called Manuscript. And so there's weird ones where, like, in one version, kind of they go, Snow White has to go through a load of different kind of, like a valley of dragons and a kind of marsh of monsters kind of thing before finding the dwarves. There's one part where kind of it was essentially going to be more on the dwarves. There's one where almost the dwarves weren't relevant. There's a version where they can't toss around the idea that the queen was going to be more like a portly kind of figure, kind of a larger kind of in physical stature, and all these kind of things. There's one where kind of Snow White was a lot more kind of I want to use the word progressive, but not that kind of perhaps forthgoing and outgoing and strong female character. There was one where Prince Charming got a lot more to do.
Fun enough, that was a change they made to Cinderella as well, which I think was one of the stories moves about the same time as this. It was like between these two, basically the final two, they were Disney wanted to do for his first film, and both of them early drafts of the scripts had them being more kind of forthright and kind of independent, and he dialed that back. He said, "People don't want to see that."
Yeah, it's just like so weird. And then he was kind of throwing around different drafts. It was like, is this going to be too comical? Do we need to kind of upgrade the kind of mature and darker moments of it? And all these things go. I'm not going into the plot of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because if you don't know the plot of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by now, what are you doing?
What's funny about the plot is that it's so
it's like 100. Yeah.
There's not even really a plot. It's like a girl finds a house and does housework and then dies. Like it really is.
No. The key thing is she escapes death in the woods and then still dies
from a necrophiliac. Yeah.
But then it's brought back at the end, like right at the end, and then we have our kind of sail away into the sunset kind of thing.
I'll give it this. It was a complete technical marvel at the time. It's still so good to look at today. It's just still so impressive. I mean, I don't know how they do the shot where she's looking into the well. It doesn't compute with my brain. How do you do this with like traditional techniques? Like the distortion,
like the water ripples.
I don't understand.
we are not psychologically equipped.
It's magic.
And and again, people have kind of criticized this for kind of infantilizing Snow White. I mean, all the critics. Again, I was doing a little bit of research beforehand. I can't remember. I've obviously now lost the article I was reading where it's in, where they were talking about the music.
I'll bring this in. So, Good Girls and Wicked Witches by Amy Davis, one of my lecturers at uni. She says this. In general, Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora are the three least active and least dynamic characters of the classic era. One thing that they all three have in common is the fact that they either have a dead mother or a mother who, though alive, is powerless to protect them. But she kind of goes on to talk about. She says at least Snow White has the good sense to run away from danger. She kind of puts her a level above, like Cinderella. She's got a bit of self-preservation about her.
I mean, so just very quickly, even this book came out in 2019 by Amy Davis called Discussing Disney. One of her chapters is essentially looking at how the kind of music and the music score reflects Snow White and kind of attitudes towards women and that. And where did I see it? So table 1, this is on page 156. Snow White's 4 songs and what they celebrate. So the song I'm Wishing functions as a musical celebration of love. Someday My Prince Will Come functions as a musical celebration of love. Whistle While You Work functions as a musical celebration of domestic work and love. With a Smile and a Song functions as a musical celebration of itself. So she's looking at like even kind of the musical songs kind of infantilized to a little bit. And apparently Walt Disney chose the actress for Snow White because she had a very childlike voice. So it kind of almost brings her down. It's not kind of a deep kind of it's now stereotypically strong female character voice, if you know what I mean.
Which makes it a bit more disturbing when the prince shows up and is clearly very much a fully grown adult man with a fully grown adult tenor voice.
Also, her voice just in general reminds me of like old Hollywood. Just I don't know. It sounds so old. Very
and
trendy.
I mean, even the kind of beginning and ending starts with the kind of operatic kind of romance strings coming in.
Yeah, Davis again talks about kind of the films of the classic era kind of taking cues from what was popular in Hollywood at the time for each one. So yeah, Snow White's definitely got that kind of classic Hollywood, almost Hollywood music, kind of all singing, all dancing, lavish musical kind of thing about it. Whereas kind of Cinderella becomes more about like kind of, I don't know, just the she referenced like Grace Kelly and things like that. It's kind of like the new fashions coming through and kind of how kind of the most kind of idolized women were expected to behave on screen. And so it's using kind of reality and what's going on in the real world to kind of inform your vision of a fantasy kind of world.
And at the same time, I can't remember which article I saw that was talking about it that I've now lost, that I looked very briefly online to make it sound like I actually knew some academia about this stuff. People are also saying kind of, you go back to the 1930s in America. Obviously, even by 1937, the Great Depression is still kind of hanging over stuff. You've got the war approaching only a few years away. The idea of doing a fairy tale, even when you've got a kind of a more passive female character and things like that, the whole point was this kind of very traditional escapist kind of thing. If you were bringing in even rumblings of kind of the 1910s, 20s kind of female kind of liberation movements, feminist movements that are starting to go with that kind of thing, it might go against the idea that they're trying to do, which is essentially to go back to an earlier time. It is a conservative viewpoint, but in a world which is so overshadowed by, sandwiched between the Great Depression and the looming threat of another war. And this is only 20 years after the First World War, which has devastated the entire planet. The idea of kind of going back to a kind of simpler, happier time, where everyone's pulling together to work for a very simple kind of life in the woods, things like that. Even if you've got a reduced female character, that is deliberately aiming to kind of bring an audience together in a kind of faux cozy, isn't everything nice with the world kind of feeling. And this is something that Disney will do quite a lot, obviously, and then it suddenly realizes that the world is changing and we're going to have to change with it. So that's also one of the kind of context of why you would decide to write in a particular way for a particular audience at that time. We can rip the hell into the presentation of Snow White all we like, but at the same time, there are certain reasons for trying to present a character in that way. Also, the fact it was in 1937 and was starting to be developed 91 years ago. Give it some credit. The fact there's a female character in it at all is impressive, let alone two female characters with the witch as well. Can I just say, the witch transformation is still terrifying.
Yes,
like,
it really is.
It's
pure nightmare fuel, and it scarred us all. It's
still terrifying. And even if it is kind of, how dare it portray women in that way, again, adjusted for inflation, I think I saw somewhere it's in like the top 10 grossing films of all time. It's got like 2.2 billion adjusted for inflation, which is more than, or it's about the same level as Avengers.
Essentially Disney, obviously it's a smash hit on release, and he basically had to use the kind of the proceeds from it to fund his next few films, none of which were a success.
I was going to say, even Fantasia was not a success.
It was like each one was kind of more expensive and complicated than the last, and didn't make their money back. To say that it was almost like the war was a reprieve for him, because at least he could get some steady work for his studio doing kind of propaganda animation.
And obviously he did some more animated films, because obviously he did Pinocchio, he did Fantasia. He would then go on to do Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and then all of our the little documentary films that he won for, like White Wonderland, where he pushed a load of lemmings off a cliff.
Well, my biggest question with Snow White is, so the Queen's main issue is that she is not the fairest of them, fairest one of all. And why doesn't she just like turn herself into someone hotter than Snow White if she has like transformation abilities?
Because she still would be pure of heart and fair of heart. So I think that's the idea that it's not just that Snow White is hotter than she is. I think it's that kind of if you kill Snow White, she would, which doesn't say much.
Well, if
about
internal
the
beauty,
world, if the Queen is second on the list.
yeah, if internal beauty is like one of the factors for fairest, then how is the Queen ever the first one? Because she's an evil queen the whole time.
There's an 80-minute film. We've got to have dwarves singing, and this is 1937. The fact there are two female characters should be applauded, and they actually have a conversation with each other.
Yeah, I mean, is the mirror like compelled to tell the truth? I mean, why doesn't he just tell her what she wants to hear?
And who did the dwarves work for? I have no idea. Why are they in a mine all day? I don't know.
No, they're mining an awful lot of gems, yet they don't seem to be doing anything with it.
Yeah, they just put them in the store cupboard at night and then leave the key on the hook outside.
Yeah, which you could just grab the key and open their little shed thing. I mean, there's a lot of issues with this film.
I love the fact you're bringing these issues up and not all the flipping talking and singing, tweeting animals, in
what
sync.
I like is with kind of 7 fairly kind of similar kind of animated dwarfs. It would be very easy just to make them clones of each other, but they do actually manage to kind of give more distinct personalities and kind of character quirks and stuff. So
this is a thing as well. They went through like loads and loads of different versions of all the possible names they could do, and kind of. Do we want those? Nah. How about these ones? Should we do these ones? Should we do these ones? And they just went through like a load of versions. So a pool of over 50 possibilities were compiled from manuscript, including Sleepy, Hoppy, Bashful, Happy, Sneezy Wheezy, Big O Ego, and Awful as the top contenders. We could have had more called Awful.
Interesting.
I mean, Grumpy should be called Incelly, really, shouldn't he?
Well, what's interesting to me about the dwarves is like this sort of masculine force in this film where, she's the housekeeper for them. She's taking care of them, doing all the domestic work. But the one who wants affection from the woman is Dopey. So like, what is this film saying about, seeking affection and attention from women? That's stupid. Only dopey people really need love. I don't know.
But do we know are the dwarfs related? Are they all brothers? Are they?
That's a good question. Are they? Are they an example of nominative determinism?
Brothers, apparently.
Yeah. I mean,
one bride for 7 brothers.
Yeah.
Well, when she first arrives, she presumes it's like children are living there, and then it's like, they must not have a mother. Well, I better be their mother, despite the fact that I'm probably a third of their age.
Yes, but she knows how to use a broom. Or sorry, she knows how to get the forest animals to use a broom. And that is the chief skill that she.
Are you saying she doesn't have any cleaning skills? She just gets the animals to do her dirty work.
Well, you don't really see them until she kind of appears there. Admittedly, she doesn't have that much screen time until she gets chased by a huntsman. Most of the time, seems to be singing into a well.
At least Cinderella, you see her really putting her back into it, on all fours, scrubbing the floor and things.
I was going to say, and she can't get right to the bottom of Kurt Vonnegut's little graph. Please tell me you two know of Kurt Vonnegut's Shapes of Stories graph.
Remind me.
Where you have the axes. On one side, you have the GI axes, so good fortune, ill fortune, and then you have beginning to electricity or end. And essentially, you kind of trace it along. So, kind of as your character is going along, if it's above the line, they're doing well. If it's below the line, they're doing badly. And he does a couple of versions, and then does one for Cinderella as well. If you haven't seen it, YouTube it. He does like a couple of versions of it. One's a shorter version. One, he starts adding in like Franz Kafka's Metamorphoses. He adds Hamlet in one bit, and he essentially does it like a stand-up comedy routine. But people have done loads of them now.
I want to know what changed from Snow White to Cinderella that made the animals talk. Because here she just has normal forest animals, and then by Cinderella, it's a bunch of talking mice.
Yeah, only the mice talk in Cinderella. And I think that's basically because they wanted to do the dwarfs again because they didn't have any better ideas. So how can we do the dwarfs again, but make them more annoying and different, physically different enough?
Still being mammals.
And also, I think there is still a holdover from the Silly Symphonies, which they're still releasing at the same time. So kind of, yes, there's dialogue, but there's an awful lot of singing, and the more kind of sections you can have taken over just for music, or as little dialogue as possible in those sequences. For example, Snow White in the forest, where she meets the forest animals for the third time before you get the dwarves. The kind of less need that you have for dialogue, and so you can just concentrate on the music, which obviously the music and the animation going together was what Disney had essentially made its name off. Yes, it had made its name off Mickey Mouse as well, but essentially Mickey and the Silly Symphonies combined. Realistically, the Silly Symphonies were what were winning the Oscars pretty much every single year because nobody else was doing it. So I think there is still a lot of holdover from the Silly Symphonies, which kind of fade out. I think the last one's 39, 40, something like that. So when you get to things like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty and those kind of things, the kind of influence that has worn off quite a bit. That would be my argument, at least. As ill-informed as it is.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yes. All right. Do we have anything else on Snow White?
It's going to be interesting in the next week to see.
Sorry,
all the
and the
comparisons.
7 Dwarfs.
Sorry, the last one was 1939. Yeah, so Silly Symphonies. So
No, I think it's still a very. There's a reason it's kind of held so highly, among kind of fans of classic animation. I think it's aged a hell of a lot better than Cinderella has, for instance. And I think it is very much one of those, like, Disney's putting everything in the studio and his animators putting everything out there. It's just such wonderful kind of artistic kind of work, wouldn't be better, for many decades afterwards.
Yeah, the writing may need improvement, but again, we are looking at it with contemporary eyes. But from an animation perspective, a sheer craft of the work that has gone into it, the fact that it's still good today, and this was groundbreaking at the time, to essentially carry off Disney's style for so many for so long. And I think I saw an article from the time, December 27th, 1937. It's Cinema, Mouse and Man. For some reason, it isn't telling me who wrote it, but essentially reckons they used about 250,000 kind of frames and images in order to do this, which sounds about right if you're thinking 24 frames a second. So the amount of time it took to do this, as well as I think we don't appreciate how long it takes to animate a film. Frame by frame, drawing the damn thing, painting multiple layers of the background, plotting it all out, recording it. This is an obscene amount of work, and it's still good even today. Yes, there are flaws. Yes, there have been better animated films. Disney have done better animated films since then, but it is nowhere near the bottom of the pile. And it's still just, you watch it and you go,
that's the Black Cauldron.
Yeah. Well, you watch this and you go, kind of, when you think of like a Disney film, this is what you're thinking of. It's kind of lodged in the head, just that everything stems from this, and it's still good. And and I'm not a massive Disney fan.
Speaking of since then, Sam, what are you talking about?
Yes. So, briefly, Disney. So after the smash hit that was Snow White, and then several other now kind of very kind of acclaimed and kind of very valued kind of films, but nevertheless didn't do too well at the box office. They had a few years of difficulty, what with the World War going on, and then financial difficulties and strikes, in the studio. Then you got
you'd never have strikes today, would you, in studios? It's just not a thing that would happen.
No. You got Cinderella, which kind of started to turn things around for the better for them. But it was only really in the late 50s with Sleeping Beauty that really kind of had another smash hit on their hands. Was equally beloved by critics and audiences and made them a lot of money again. and that kind of continued throughout the kind of the 60s. They started doing a little bit better. Then things went downhill again, and into the 70s and especially the 80s. It was kind of the wilderness years, that were just very lots of difficulties of creative kind of struggling creatively and financially, and animators leaving for better prospects elsewhere. And the 9 old men who had basically been working in the studio since its inception started to move on to, or just retiring essentially, so, trying to get that new talent through, talent like Brad Bird and Tim Burton, notably. But eventually you get around to the studio under new management, so Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner. And you essentially get to the 90s, which now become known as Disney Renaissance. And it's basically all came around from Michael Eisner's desire for a Disney film to finally win an Oscar. That was his aim for the whole decade. It was, we want that Oscar. And the closest he got to it was Beauty and the Beast, which was at least nominated. This is obviously pre the Best Animated Feature Oscar. So I think Beauty and the Beast was the only animated film to ever be nominated for Best Picture. So
and that's when there were 5.
And I mean, and it's kind of, I mean, if you think about it, I don't know any before it, but probably Little Mermaid, realistically, is at least the kind of cultural stuff, because that was 89, wasn't it?
That's considered the turning point. That's considered like the start of the Renaissance.
You've got that. You've got Beauty and the Beast, and obviously in '94 as well, you've got the Lion King.
And
between the 3 of those, Disney is now kind of back into steamrolling.
Though they had the kind of the same, this Oscar aim and awards glory aim in mind, they didn't really know for sure what would be a hit and what wouldn't be. It's like there was lots of stories of the animation teams kind of juggling multiple projects and some being taken off others to focus on the ones that they thought would be more like contenders. Like the Lion King essentially was that their B team basically working on that, because most of the kind of the perceived as more talented animators were taken off it to work on Pocahontas, which was seen as a more likely awards contender, because it was like a historical drama essentially. But then obviously Only the One seems to have aged that well.
And then we do have to remember, obviously, that the year after that as well, they go and break ground again with kind of partnering up with Pixar to do Toy Story. And I mean, you look back at Toy Story now, and there are parts where you're like, this is not great, but the first kind of full 3D kind of animated feature along those lines, like, it's still damn good. And again, I think stuff like that, we now take these kind of 3D animations, again, Pixar so much for granted, and go, oh, look how awful it is. It doesn't look great, but
we'll get more onto 3D animation later, fortunately.
Yeah. But I just thought, as we're going through the timeline, we have to bring up Toy Story, because it did completely change the game again. So fair play to Disney and the company in terms of animation. Yes, we can slag it off all we like for being the corporate racist giant that it is. But at the same time, in terms of craft, there have been some moments in time where you have to just take your hat off to it and go, to be fair, well played there. You've done some damn good work.
So you had Little Mermaid, you had Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Hercules, and then finally 98. You got Mulan, which was something pretty special at the time, something pretty different, bit of a game changer, really. So Disney's first East Asian lead character, the first adaptation of Asian folk tales as opposed to European ones, and packing it full, quite admirably, of mostly kind of Hollywood Asian talent, so lots of
plus Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, for Eddie Murphy and Harvey Fierstein for some reason, because he was in all of the Disney movies in the 90s. But yeah, so this is based on the Chinese folktale ballad of Hua Mulan, who they renamed to Fa Mulan in this for some reason, which I've never quite worked out, but okay.
Probably Hua is harder for American audience to say than Fa.
Maybe, yeah. But essentially, yeah, it's a classic story. I mean, I think there's been various iterations of this over the years. You know that without the Mulan badging, it's quite a classic kind of story, kind of setup, really. So, a daughter of an old warrior disguised herself as a man to go off to war in his stead to prove herself and win her family honor. Essentially, that's a very dangerous drinking game to play with. This is take a drink every time someone says honor. You'll be on the floor.
Does dishonor count as well?
Yeah. This was also the era where they were starting to get more celebrity kind of voice acting talent in as like a marketing gimmick. So Robert Williams as the genie in Aladdin was probably like the first most prominent one of these in the earlier in the decade. But yeah, most of them usually had at least one kind of well-known comedian normally doing their normal kind of routines, but in animated form. So Eddie Murphy doing Eddie Murphy routine. Well, he's family friendly Eddie Murphy routine anyway. He's got like 2 modes, doesn't he? But I mean, that's one of the things that really annoys Chinese viewers, especially just the dishonor, the lack of respect that Hollywood is showing to what dragons mean in their culture, basically turning him into like a comedy character, you know, and reducing his power is quite insulting to them apparently. But
and giving him feet as well, which I don't think is incredibly common for kind of the worm dragons.
Yeah. I mean, he's called he's mistaken by Milan for a lizard, isn't he? The first time they meet, and
he doesn't do the thing with the tongue.
Yeah, I don't do that tongue thing. So there are quite a few kind of tropes that they go back to time and time again. I mean, I think the various kind of iterations of the Disney kind of story and like the different kind of creative eras, they all have like their kind of differences from each other and similarities. But some of the common ones with the Disney Renaissance is most of their protagonists are clumsy for some reason. That was just a thing they did in the 90s, you know. So, and Mulan's definitely that. She's a bit of a cuts. She's got the highly merchandisable animal sidekicks. So obviously, you got Mushu, you got the dragon, then you've got a horse, and you've got the lucky cricket as well. And the goofy dog that's in the opening and closing scenes, but can't really count that. But
it was a very simple face. Like
yeah.
Well, if it works, it works.
I remember I can't remember who the tie-in was with, but it was either McDonald's or Burger King. But I remember getting like a little toy cricket, I think, at the time with my Happy Meal. So you have clumsy protagonists. You have a stunt cast comedian and merchandisable animal sidekicks, and usually a story about the importance of being yourself. That's usually what it comes down to. You know, they usually trying to be something they're not, but the revelation at the end. Of course, it was inside me all along, and I should have just been my own thing.
And the real the real prize of the friends we made along the way. You know.
Yeah.
Although I will say with this, I was watching it again earlier today, and there were parts where just the brass kind of kicks in for like these main themes, and I had to do a double check to go, is this John Powell doing it? Because there's parts of the brass that sound exactly like kind of How to Train Your Dragon. I'm like, no, it's not. He hasn't just recycled themes.
No, it's Jerry Goldsmith, who I'm sure John Powell is very influenced by. Because
I think if you're a kind of blockbuster composer and you're not influenced by Jerry Goldsmith in some way, what are you doing?
Well, no, it's either you're even influenced by John Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, or Hans Zimmer, aren't you? I mean, they're like
or Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah. I mean, the music in this, I think, is among the best in the kind of the Renaissance kind of era. Not just the songs, which are very catchy. I mean, especially "Make a Man Out of You," which is a great karaoke track. At least it would be if I had the courage to do karaoke. I'm sure. I've seen lots of YouTube videos of Disney kids singing passionately along to it. But just a bit like what Hans Zimmer did for the Lion King score in terms of taking influence from the culture you're basing your story in. I think Jerry Goldsmith does a very good job of kind of taking those kind of Chinese kind of East Asian kind of musical influence. The flutes and the can't remember the particular kinds of drums they use in the soundtrack, but just how that's laid in, and also the art style is very again, I think I particularly like about the 90s Disney animated films. Before this, their role of Disney's role of a particular style, there wasn't really much variation. The kind of human characters looked a certain way. But I think with the 90s ones, they did very much change their visual style depending on what kind of story they've been told. So like the Hercules, the character looking a bit like a cross between kind of political caricatures and like Greek urns, and this
still annoys me that he's called Hercules and it's Greek.
I know.
It should be Heracles.
And this looking like a Chinese kind of ink kind of watercolor painting, and just how the characters are drawn and proportioned and everything. That's
and
really nice.
I know they've done it earlier because they did it for a couple of things in, for example, Beauty and the Beast. But these times when they're starting to experiment with using little bits of 3D in it, and I'm thinking particularly of the one shot where they set off the firework, which is giving away their location, despite the fact that the entire army fires off them from a mountaintop 10 seconds later, implying they were there already and didn't notice the massive army trooping through the valley just below them. It's like, you're not giving the game away. They're just bloody stupid. But there's a rain of arrows coming down at them. It's gorgeous.
And again, I think all these films, they're all innovative in different ways. They all have that one kind of wow technical kind of this is a new thing kind of show off sequence. And also for this one, you get the rain of arrows, and then you got the Huns charging down the mountain. Just which they had to develop some new kind of. Obviously, this the early days of kind of computer software, simulating kind of movements of things. So they came up with a program that made wildebeest move independently, not just for the stampede scene in Lion King, and this obviously for the Huns charging down the mountain.
And obviously we forgot to mention two films in the 80s that Disney did that were kind of pushing the animation style with kind of differently, but live action animation. Obviously, you've got Who Framed Roger Rabbit teaming up with Warner Brothers, which one of the stipulations for that I found out at the beginning of the year, hilariously enough, was that they literally timed to the second all the amount of times that the Warner Brothers and Disney characters were on screen. It had to be exactly the same.
Exactly, and that's why there's two of them on screen at all times. So there's always one Disney character and one Warner Brothers character sharing the screen together.
But that's in 88. But the thing we missed also talking about the 3D is that 2 years before that you had Tron. Which I keep forgetting was a Disney.
Which was Disney,
yeah. And obviously that was the first film to have kind of a part of it completely 3D graphics for a kind of 3D world for the original Light Cycle scene, which probably interesting to bring up now because obviously the new one is meant to be coming out in the next year or two as well, Tron Ares, isn't it? So yeah, it's like they're constantly experimenting with this kind of 3D stuff, and it would only be 4 years after Mulan that Studio Ghibli do it in Spirited Away in their brief moments of experimenting with 3D. And I think this is when it works best. And I mean, when you just have these specific moments. I mean, I remember watching Pokemon back in the day, and I think it's around the time of Gen 3, Gen 4, like late advanced Battle Frontier style, when they bring in just little moments of 3D, especially for something like Volt Tackle for Pikachu. Just the little moments, not overdoing the thing, but when you can almost, they're seeing if they can seamlessly blend it in together. And Mulan, especially that rain of arrows just firing down on you. It's such a simple, gorgeous moment that the 2D animation would not have got that feeling out of. But they don't overdo it. They then kind of drop back and blend it a little bit with the 2D as well, especially with stuff kind of in the distance. If it's right in your face, it wouldn't work as well. But the fact they've kind of done it for all the details in the background really makes it pop.
For me, going from Snow White to Mulan, like the biggest difference was the giant landscape shots just in general in Mulan,
Yeah.
where everything in Snow White is pretty tight and just sort of in the vicinity that it's in. You get the wide shots, more like what you'd get in like a sort of 50s epic film. And obviously, like Sam, you discussed all the different movies that came in between now and then. This isn't the first one, but just going from Snow White, which we watched, to Mulan, which we watched, that's a big one. And during the Be a Man scene, there's the just solid red background that they're training on. Like it's more willing to go into surreal spaces with the animation, which you could see also in those previous films, but just extreme color and things like that. And while there's a lot of expressionist elements in Snow White, I think by the 90s, like they're comfortable with fully pushing that in every aspect of the film.
Yeah, and I think in the early, obviously, part of that decade, they'd had enough successes that they could do a little bit of experimenting with. That's something, obviously, we talked about with Snow White, that it was such a massive hit that the next few films, they could start to push out boundaries. I mean, Fantasia is, for a major studio, probably one of the biggest, most experimental films they'd ever done, and probably still do. You imagine somebody like, I was about to say 20th Century Fox, that is Disney. But you know, like one of the big majors now, the 5 or 6 that aren't merged together now. Can you imagine them taking the style and then putting out what the equivalent? I mean, Snow White to Fantasia is the equivalent of like having a straightforward like action movie and then going, yeah, we're going to make Monty Python make an action movie and we're going to give them a budget of 150 mil. That's kind of the nearest I can get equivalent in terms of styles, but putting it on. You'd never get that.
The action in Mulan compared to Snow White being so sedate is insane too. Like it's so much more entertaining because of it, just as a film, but also it's really well done and looks good.
It is, yeah. I mean, Em Davis kind of described this kind of she kind of when she talks about like the Disney princess, she kind of categorize them all, kind of collects them all together, depends on kind of how they appear, and she calls Belle, Mulan, and Jane the good daughters of Disney.
I can see that.
She says all 3 films feature heroines who, out of love and loyalty to their fathers, willingly put themselves in harm's way. And she kind of she talks about how Mulan, obviously, it's very dependent on that kind of I suppose the stereotypical view of like East Asian cultures in this kind of patriarchal society and kind of women's subservience and expectations of being a good wife, and that's your purpose to your family. If you're a daughter, if you're a son, you're going to inherit land and go fight and be the face of the family. But if you're a woman, you kind of looking at a more domestic life.
The more I think about it, the more I kind of almost feel like Mulan's drawing a lot on sort of classic. Let's go up to about the 60s before the revisionist stuff of like early westerns. You've got those big landscape shots as well. Obviously, I'm thinking almost like John Ford style, just like big expanses. You've got the things where they're traveling in the wagons. Obviously, westerns and sometimes kind of American Civil War movies kind of can bleed into one another. Obviously, not with the massive kind of fights, although perhaps a little bit of an ambush scene. And then I'm also thinking of Mulan in general, kind of. I can't remember the main character, but in True Grit, where she starts off wanting the right thing. She's clumsy. She's never done it before. She doesn't know how to do it. And by the end, she's kind of taking charge. Obviously, the plot of that is different, but the kind of growing characterizations with these.
And you get several westerns, I suppose, where women do kind of try and put aside their kind of escape their place, kind of their defined place in society, by, I suppose, acting more like a man, and kind of trying to reassert their kind of independence. I mean, which especially I think that's kind of the things that work really well in these kind of historical kind of settings, But I think Merge gets like a lot of Disney. I mean, it's classic Disney song kind of structure, but as you get, especially in the Renaissance, you get a lot of some very memorable, they're called "I Want" songs. Like the protagonist normally has to sing about, what their aim is, during this story, and what their dreams are, and
I want to build a snowman. No, sorry.
Yeah. And Mulan, I think, has probably got the most moving and kind of hard hitting of those. With it's called Reflections, I think. But who's that girl I see staring back at me? Why is my reflection someone I don't know? She's having this kind of identity crisis almost. I mean, she just the opening scene. She's been prepared by the matchmaker, for marriage. And told her she needs to appear a certain way, but she just tries. She might, she wants to please her family, but she knows she knows it's not her. It's not. It doesn't feel right, and she'll never be that kind of person. And that whole character arc going through all she goes through, to try and prove herself, but all comes back to returning home at the end, and her dad just says, basically, I'm so glad you're back, that he's still with me, just.
Well, and for me, that
still brings tears to my eye even today, just. Was it the greatest honor I could have is having you for a daughter? It's just.
I mean, that moment is biblical. I mean, what was it? The man with the two sons that he sends them both out, and one spends it all, and one kind of it's fine, and upon the one's return, he kind of greets him and holds a feast. You've messed up, but you've come back. You're still alive. You've returned back to where you belong. That's very biblical, and it kind of reminds me that I think we discussed a little bit of this as well. But Mulan didn't do especially well in China on its release. And a lot of the people going, well, essentially what's happened is they've taken kind of Chinese ideas and completely westernized it. So this isn't necessarily a Chinese film or a Chinese or an Asian kind of version. It's essentially a Western adaptation through Western eyes, through Western interpretation, Western values as well of Chinese iconography. So saying it's a good representation of China is not the case.
No, and that criticism went doubly so for the live-action remake, I think, which made the effort of casting big Chinese stars in like the lead roles, but was very much all the creative team essentially were white Westerners. I mean, they did at least get a woman to direct that one, so that's a tick, I suppose.
Hooray! So they get a woman to direct the films that they're fairly sure won't do well, and then we never hear
only
of her
because
again.
of COVID. They thought it would make money, I'm sure. Sam, the big thing with the Reflection song for me is that sort of her arc in the film is that she becomes a man. And so when I'm hearing that song, I can't help but think that this is and I realize by the end Mulan is a woman and she embraces her own brand of femininity, but it's hard to escape the transness of that Reflection song where she's going, this station in life, this box that I've been put into by societal femininity doesn't fit me, so I'm going to become a dude.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a reason why this is one of the more popular kind of films with the trans community, that they feel seen through it. Just like obviously queer kind of Disney fans embrace a lot of the campier kind of more flamboyant villains as well.
Well, and Li Shang, essentially he falls in love with Mulan while she is pretending to be a man.
I get that more rather than the kind of. I mean, obviously, the trans reading is definitely a reading. It's a valid one, but I get more the. Because I think he has been embraced as a possibly just a bisexual in denial,
he thinks
sounds
pink
like
is
most
hot.
of the Disney execs. Oh, sorry, we're not meant to say that.
And also a thing that was pointed out to me by my wife is that the sort of Mulan being the only woman in the workplace when they're singing the song about a girl worth fighting for. And she's like, oh, what about a girl with a brain and opinions? And they go, boo.
Nah. Yeah. I mean, it's I always find it funny though that obviously all the vocal performances are really good. There's some really good actors in this. Kind of giving life to characters. But next to none, I don't think any of them do their own singing. they kind of all have like singing doubles. I mean, which isn't a slight on them, really. I mean, earlier in decade, like the actors that got to play like Belle and Ariel, they were proper Broadway kind of singers. They were trained singers, so
very Bollywood system going on there.
They could do the whole thing, whereas this they're casting like TV actors or film actors, don't necessarily have their skill set. But I'll say this to them. I mean, I'm not surprised they're to double after, even if they could sing even half decently. These are some challenging songs. There are some complex songs, lots of like southern, lots of kind of fast pace and kind of changes in octaves and stuff. It's just they're not easy to sing. I still find it funny that they get Li Shang is voiced by B.B. Wong, aka Dr. Wu from Jurassic Park, but his singing voice is Donny Osmond.
Yeah.
Like do.
I think the thing that stood out to me the most this time watching Mulan is that the bad guy is just so flat. And although he is intimidating and cool looking, very cat-like, which is weird.
That's another element that probably hasn't aged too well. I don't think you can get away with this anymore. That the Huns in this are very much like that classic offensive stereotype kind of yellow peril kind of thing. They might as well be like Fu Manchu, on horses.
But
they're just.
I was going to say they're not incredibly. They're fairly sort of racially stereotyped.
When you start getting into his positives, it's that he's nice to his falcon. Like that's all the Disney wiki had for me.
But I will say it is very nice, especially when now kind of all of the villains have to have good sides and bad sides. Considering a lot of the politics going on in the moment, I think we need to I've said this for a while. Sometimes you do need a villain that's just bad for the sake of being bad. Because there are some people out there who are just a-holes for the sake of being a-holes.
And because they've given because they've given like tragic backstories to
all the evil queens essentially.
All the queens essentially. But yes, some are just bad for value. It's like Dracula, as an example of character, should be kind of evil for the sake of being evil. He should just be pure, like a void of darkness and just.
You could explain why is he invading China? Like I didn't get. It's just like I'm invading China to invade China.
I think it's generally everyone who wasn't China back then kind of saw it as like a prize, And,
but back then is 1998, so like I would just like the movie to explain to me what is this guy's motivation.
I mean, it's a Chinese kind of folk tale. I mean, again, at the end, there's kind of differing kind of records about whether there was anyone like this who it's based on. It's probably more like for UK, it's probably more like a Robin Hood. It's like there probably were equivalent characters, but it's not based on any one person.
Who's the Luddite leader that was a fake guy?
And the legend is kind of usually seems to be based around about like 500 AD, so a lot earlier than this is set in, whereas this seems to be more medieval times, I think. So they've kind of brought it forward, I think, basically so they could have them fighting the Huns, just to make it a bit more sense. In the remake, I think they call them something else. They call them like another tribe that was around in the appropriate period, and they set it earlier. But
South Park hadn't done the Mongolians episode yet, so
I mean, it's a bit of a grab bag in terms of like your cultural kind of touchstones. I mean, kind of for all kind of it kind of references like Chinese art and kind of cultural kind of elements. It's a bit of a grab bag. It's sort of there's some Chinese cultural stuff in here. There's some Korean cultural stuff in here. There's a bit of Japan. It's basically it's all of these stages kind of into one kind of melting pot, really. Which,
Asian.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, white guys don't know the difference, so like, why not? Yeah.
Yeah. And books didn't exist in
J horror. Exactly. Yeah. It is one of the good ones. Must be said
Yeah,
this.
I mean, this is like a war movie, isn't it? I mean, there are like a couple of proper battles in this, and you don't really see people die, but you see the aftermaths of battles. You see,
Yeah.
kind of the wasteland left over, and you actually see some blood in this, which it doesn't happen in Disney in Disney film very often. A little bit of blood.
Yes.
But it's in the stereotypical kind of everything's fine, character looks down, reveals a
Yeah.
gaping wound in the side. No,
Yeah.
only now do we feel faint, kind of thing,
Yeah. I think this is still it's still most holds up. I think this definitely is one of my favorite Disney Renaissance movies. And I think I had it when I ranked these for the film magazine. I think I had it midway through a table. I think I had it either 4 or 5. I think of however many I did. Was it 10 or 11?
I seem to remember you doing that article.
And
it
really appeals to my masculine sensibilities of war waging and discrimination. So
obviously.
I mean, it's still it still looks great. It sounds great, and the fonts are really good. I think it's funny. I think it's memorable. It's just a good animated movie. I think, and Mulan. Obviously, you mentioned the kind of definition of the princess earlier on. So obviously, she's not royal. It's implied that she'll continue a relationship with Li Shang at the end, but he's not royal.
Who's
either.
also
He's
not
just,
royal.
Yeah, but I suppose it's that other sense of it's kind of what she does. It's her exceptional heroism, isn't it? That
saved China.
That elevates her to that. So, yeah, essentially, the emperor basically said, "Take what you want." So, if she said, "Oh, okay, I'll be a right hand woman," then she could have done it. So,
yeah, the emperor's like, "You could be on my council," and she says, no. I'm going to go home and eat rice.
Sam, I can confirm you put this at number 5 on your list of 10 films, 11 including the honorable mention for the Goofy movie.
Yes, which was from that era, but not a Renaissance film. It was
true.
Yeah, but yes. So I think she was interesting as this princess for this era. Obviously, having the kind of the clumsiness and the kind of the every man, but every woman kind of
every fake man.
Very relatable character, and empathetic character. And Ming-Na Wen is great in the role. But that kind of, I mean, long before we had this idea of like, she probably called her Mary Sue now, wouldn't she? But that's getting another week. Though I didn't mind the remake. I thought it worked on its own terms as like a, I don't know, like a Disney-fied kind of whoosher action movie. It was decent enough, I thought. But one criticism of it I did agree with is that there wasn't any struggle in the remake. Really, Mulan, she really has to work to kind of get to where she is at the end. She's not incompetent. She's good at so she uses her wiles. She works stuff out, but she's got to work really hard. To get to the level of like the other soldiers and to be what's going to be a good part of the team and everything. So it's that struggle, I think, that makes it. And the remake probably made it a bit too easy for her because she's the best she is from the start, and then just her challenge is more people not noticing that she's the best rather than her trying to become better and prove herself.
Which does, I mean, I can see that for relating to women in the modern workplace where they're good and not recognized, but. Yeah, I mean, there is something to showing that struggle and showing, in this movie during Make a Man Out of You, they have to climb the pole or whatever, and that's what she ultimately does at the end. And it's not because she's the best; it's because she figured out you tie the stupid things together, which no one thought of.
Yeah.
It's also got one of my favorite. It's got one. Just one father. It's got one of my favorite. I just love just some of the random things that Eddie Murphy comes out with. When they're all having their vulnerable moment on the mountaintop. They always lost moment, their lowest ebb. They're all confess to each other. Kind of how much of what big failures they are. And Mushu rounds on Khan the horse and goes, "What are you, a sheep?" So,
they're all liars in this movie. I don't know if that's the point of this movie. If you're a liar, you'll do well in life, maybe.
It could be.
Yeah,
Capitalism.
Mulan, good movie. Good
It
movie.
is.
It is.
So let's leap forward a couple more decades, shall we?
Yeah. Well, to not Disney princesses apparently. And part of the reason is because Frozen as a franchise is so successful on its own that they don't count as the Disney princess brand.
Like, you try telling Disney that aside from their official branding.
Well, yeah. Tell Disney what they're telling me, because I'm just going off them.
Like, again, I can't remember if I said it on air. I think I definitely told you last time off air. I went pre-COVID with my ex and took her to the Disney on Ice because she's a massive Disney fan. Kind of went to the Disney World Florida every year with the family and had done for like pretty much her entire life.
That's insane.
And they kind of dedicate parts to, one song, skate around for this film, one for that one, half time, blah, blah, blah. I think like Aladdin maybe had 2 songs, so it was maybe sort of 7, 8, 9 minutes long, that kind of thing. Tangled, which is my favorite of the kind of the Pixar ones, had a song. And then, of course, Frozen. Bearing in mind this was maybe 2018, maybe 2019, so I'm not sure if 2 had come out, but Frozen was still the thing. That had a good 25 to 30 minutes worth of stuff going on. So try telling Disney that
Kieran, if it was 2019, these movies have grossed $2.6 billion at this point. Like,
and every kid, every school child in the last 10 years knows Let It Go off by heart.
I mean, most Disney movies are kind of sort of musicals. There's like 4 or 5 like brief songs, maybe a couple of more drawn out. Both Frozen
Even
movies,
Pirates of the Caribbean.
both Frozen movies are proper musicals. There are so many songs in both of those movies.
Yeah.
So in you mentioned Tangled coming out, and that's the first 3D Disney Animations princess film.
I was going to say, we had a few Disney princess films before that, like Princess and the Frog, obviously a recent thing that the sequel, new version, whatever it was, has been cancelled. They might readapt stuff, but they've killed it. Strange that it's a black female character in there. I wonder if this is any connection.
I think it's because they don't like New Orleans, because it just gets flooded all the time. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff came out. Obviously, like the fun. I picked Frozen 2. The fun thing about all the other princess films is the direct-to-video sequels that don't really count as princess films.
They're universally awful, well, except for
all terrible.
The Beauty and the Beast Christmas one's okay.
It's not.
If you're in the right sort of mood.
Disagree. Still not good.
I'm still gonna put Elizabeth Swann down as an unofficial Disney princess. I don't care.
It's all not great, but by 2019, Frozen, we just talked about how big of a brand it is. It made over $1 billion with the first movie. My first encounter with it, I worked in a daycare, and so I watched it while watching the kids. But I'd always watch it in bits because I'd be off doing stuff. So
you never actually watched it all the way through, kind of thing.
I have by now, but and I was seeing it in bits. Yeah, it's a full-on musical, made tons of money. It's on shoes at stores. It's on McDonald's toys, everything.
Yeah, because that's the thing with Disney and Disney princess movies. Like, for the most part, like now, even if the movie doesn't do well, that's kind of not the point of the Disney princess film. The point of the Disney princess film is to sell the dresses.
Yeah, it's Star Wars. Star Wars is much more that, but yes, it very much Disney princesses sell the dress.
It's the feedback into the main moneymaker for Disney, which is still the theme parks.
Yes.
And the merchandise that you buy at the theme parks.
So so by 2013, because it's 2013.
I've told you guys before and must have done, but I'll mention it again. My old lecturer Hugh. One of the films he did was financed by a guy who essentially gives money away because he's inherited the entire merchandising rights to the entirety of Disney, which is just insane. Like, as a concept, like, what do you do for a living? I don't do anything. Why? I own the merch rights to Disney. You've won capitalism without doing anything. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Like, an insane thing. And again, it's like he now like gives millions away to finance random movies because he has nothing like to do with all this money, because that's how they make their money. The reason you make the film, even if it like loses 50 million at the box office, you know, what other film production company, I know Disney does other things as well, but let's call it a film production company. What other film production company has like random retail stores in hundreds of towns and cities in countries it isn't located in?
None of them.
Like, it's just
good luck going to the Paramount store. It doesn't exist.
Like, you might have one like in LA. I don't know if they do.
No, there's no chance. There's not a WB store. Like,
you know, it's like if you were gonna do one, they might have one on like the Vegas Strip, not in the Vegas Strip, but like right down Hollywood Boulevard. Yeah. You might have one for somebody like Warner Brothers, and I think probably
I don't
Warner
believe
Brothers. Warner Brothers, are probably the
Warner Brothers here
compete with them with the theme parks.
Well, yeah, Six Flags and Looney Tunes, like those would be it would be the specific brands. It wouldn't be you go to the Warner Brothers store, like if it's anything at all.
In terms of a film franchise, theme park franchise kind of connection. Probably the only one I can think of is Lego, because it now has the theme parks. But it's not in terms of like a film production company. Yeah. Disney's like it's not about the films. That's films because... and the productions are an excuse to make the merchandise.
Yeah. Well, and
that's the machine.
And then the merchandise becomes a reason to make the film, and you get Pirates of the Caribbean and all that junk.
Tomorrowland.
Yeah. But
for Haunted Mansion, whatever it is.
for Frozen, we're kind of back to Legends, but it's not really based on it. It's like very loosely taken from the Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen.
Who obviously also wrote Little Mermaid.
But not at all, like really in any way. It's very much a unique story. And what's so great about Frozen is it undermines the prince trope, and it makes it about the two sisters. The prince is evil, and there's just this random dude that one of the princesses falls in love with. But Elsa, the primary princess queen character, does not. She does not have a lover.
Yeah. And this is an inversion of something else that kind of the witch is the antagonist. Whereas essentially in this, you've made the witch one of the protagonists. So again, it's kind of, as time has gone on, Disney has gone, we have to take these tropes and occasionally try and do something different with it.
And I was so taken with like the first half of the first Frozen, at the very least. I think in my mind it's near enough perfect. Just that it's just such an interesting take on it. It's almost like a supervillain origin story, but she's a Disney princess, and it's just so well done. I love it.
She is a Disney princess. Do you hear that, Disney?
A bit like with the Pirates franchise, though. I got a lot less interested as they started adding more and more stuff to it. Especially in the sequel.
Well, and Frozen 2, obviously Frozen 1 is iconic, but Frozen 2 released in 2019.
Let's be honest, though. Frozen 1 is not as iconic as the one song. I would kind of argue.
I disagree. It's all just wrapped up as one just major cultural thing for kids and family entertainment.
I think considering it was only released a decade ago, I think it's got quite iconic. Obviously, we'll see. We'll see if it's still around in another 70 years.
Yeah, but the song will be, is my point.
Yeah.
And also, my thing to Frozen is my old flatmate told me to watch it, so I did. And then she got very annoyed when I came back, and obviously being a film student at that point, told her that aside from opening one door near the end, Olaf was essentially plot useless, and you could get rid of him and give all of his actions to another character.
But again, that's classic Disney. He is the mascot. He's the comedy sidekick. He doesn't need a purpose. He's just there.
So why don't you make Sven the comedy sidekick? He is an animal as well. Like you can still do this.
One of my favorites, Sven, one of my favorite, again, like little tropes for each era of Disney. One of my favorite tropes of this last decade of Disney is if there's an animal sidekick, whatever animal it is, it's basically a dog. Sven is like is an elk, but he's a dog. Maximus the horse in Tangled was a horse, but he is also a dog.
The good thing,
I would argue Moana has two because she has Hey Hey and Pua, who appears in like 2 scenes.
Yeah.
With and comparing it to the mice, like Sven is voiced by a character in the movie, so he does not have a voice. He is a human creating a persona for a reindeer, which this movie gets into.
If Elsa is technically a queen, therefore making Anna, at least for this one, the princess
in Frozen 1.
Yes, that's what I said in this one. The fact that she teams up with Sven and it's not Hans, is it? Who's the guy? Kristoff, that's it. Technically, they are both the animals at this point. Like, they are both the pet sidekicks, let's be fair. So I count Sven the reindeer as the pet sidekick, therefore making Anna a Disney princess. Fight me.
What I like about Frozen 2, and in theaters I was very kind of whelmed by it, but what I like about it is that it is more introspective. There are a lot of plot conveniences along the way. You could tell that when they focus tested it, that kids were not able to follow along. I know that because it's a bit of a struggle for me to follow along, but in terms of what it's trying to say about like change and about the nature of life, and I do like those aspects, but as a story, I think it could be a little more tightened up and refined.
The mythology, it's just adding more and more stuff doesn't necessarily make it better. It just makes it more complicated and not necessarily.
Yeah,
I don't know whether it really helps to develop the characters, because I think they had a perfectly good kind of character arc in the first one.
Yeah,
and just like further exploring their kind of childhood trauma, which I suppose be interesting, but just I don't know whether Elsa needs another mission, in this. It's a bit.
The plot.
I think it would have been better if you'd have just given it like a storyline where perhaps just Anna has to go off and do something, and Elsa is at home being a queen, which is her job.
The plot of
those is your 2 storylines.
The plot of Frozen 2 is Elsa hears voices, and so she goes off into the wilderness.
The unknown.
Which, by the way, Into the Unknown they tried so hard to match Let It Go, and it
really doesn't.
No,
it's a good. It's
fine.
A good song, but it's not Let It Go.
Idina Menzel as a singer is just so incredible, and she's really able to show off in the song. But as a song, it's like, come on, guys, don't try and do Let It Go again. But
I like it. I like in the ice kind of vapor flashback kind of void she's in. There's a point where she's kind of looking around and kind of seeing highlights in the previous film, and she kind of recoils a bit where she hears kind of her doing the high note of "Let It Go." She kind of goes, "Oh."
But the plot of it is, Elsa. I forget exactly. Everyone is driven out of Arendelle because of like ice or something.
The elements start acting up.
The elements. The
four classical elements. So
yeah,
the fires
and this is
go
before
out,
they did their element film.
Yeah, this is essentially an Avatar film.
Elsa is an ice bender.
The 4 elements are apparently in a forest far away, which connects to the character's past, and they need to go and learn about the past in order to right things and help people live in harmony. And so,
which is weird because this is a plot for a third part of a trilogy, according to Scream 3. The third one is all about the past. You get the first one, the second one expands, the third one goes back and rewrites all 3.
No, so the second one, she should have tried to give up her powers and live a normal life for a while.
Probably.
We'll see what to manage ruling a kingdom with those and the troubles that come of managing a kingdom with the use of these powers.
We'll see what Frozen 3
This is why we
does.
don't write for Disney, so
it will surely make $1 billion despite the box office as it is. But
yeah. We're definitely going to be seeing Moana 3 and Frozen 3.
Yeah,
in
but
the not too distant future.
Moana, sorry, Frozen 3 is set for 2026, 7, somewhere like that.
What's so interesting about like the way that it sort of portrays essentially she goes into the woods and she meets these people and she finds out that her her grandfather was oppressing these forest people and like built a dam to completely screw them over, even though the way it was presented is like, this is a good thing. And when I look at that in the point in time where it was made, it very much strikes a chord with me as an American, where I'm like, hey, not only did my country suck in the past, it is actively sucking and making things worse for people. And that continues to resound. But like it flips the, my grandpa was the good guy into, oh, no, my grandpa was terrible and I have to right this wrong in the present.
The trouble is, I saw that dam, and all I thought of was Fast and Furious 10, which is not.
That's very interesting. Your brain went there.
What do you think about the common reason that this is just a big old coming out metaphor? Because as you pointed out, Elsa still hasn't had a romance, has she? So.
Well, Elsa is, I think more so with Frozen 1, a big old coming out metaphor. Personally, with 2, I don't see it, and I'm not concerned with it. But like, in Let It Go, and I guess heading into the unknown, she's going off by herself off this beaten path. Like, I can see it. I don't feel it from watching this movie.
Yeah. I am more convinced with the idea that The Little Mermaid is a trans allegory than this is a coming out allegory.
Yeah. It really, Olaf is very much a vehicle for like the child viewer. Where he's talking about like, I don't understand anything that's going on here. I'm just very silly, and I'll understand it when I'm older and more mature. And I think he's meant to just sort of represent the average person watching this movie.
Yes, Olaf, otherwise known as Dr. Watson.
Yeah. And he's the one who introduces the introspection into like change and the nature of relationships and things over time. And I do like that first song where Anna's like, hey, stuff changes, but I'm always going to love you, Olaf. It is a good song, and everybody gets a little part in it too.
There's a weird thing about this in that the first one did some new stuff. How groundbreaking it actually is, I'm not enough up on my Disney and my children's animated films to know. But I think it's kind of accepted by the common person, if not the cinephile and the theoretician, that it was at least trying some new things with the formula, even if it wasn't entirely groundbreaking. And this one is weird in that it kind of goes so far one way in terms of the complexity for films which 3- and 4-year-olds are going to watch, let's be fair, that they then have to essentially over-explain everything at the same time. So you have a film which is both overly complicated and overly simplified at the same time.
A lot of that over-explaining is in like plot conveniences, like just, okay, I learned this information now because of a vision or whatever, and it's just sort of fed, and there's no real reason why she should be learning this. It's just magic, and it feels lazy. And
some visions work for some films. I was Mark Kermode in Good, the Bad, and the Multiplex, one of his books. He was talking about the original Ring from '98 versus the Gore Verbinski version, and it might have been him. It might have been some academic textbook. Somebody has mentioned it. But they're talking about the fact that in the '98 version, the way that you get the information about Sadako is through essentially a flashback, kind of psychically given to Asakawa. The Asakawa character, and in the remake, it is through a series of videotapes. The one is essentially supernatural, and one is essentially scientific, and it's kind of more supernatural in the Japanese version because that's more in fitting with their culture. That this would be kind of acceptable, whereas the the videotapes the more scientific method of a slightly kind of a Western American audience would be more accepting of finding kind of rational information rather than the psychic vision. So you can have information given through these kind of psychic means, and it feed into part of the culture in an organic fashion, because in Ring, or Ringu, if you want to say it, it has some kind of theological kind of rationale underpinning. This feels much like we have about 90 minutes. We need to give the information out somehow.
It doesn't feel at all connected to culture. It doesn't feel. I think it would have been better if she sat down with like the leader and the leader tells like her side of the story. But we don't really get that voice of the native sort of people in medieval, I don't know, Norway or Denmark or wherever this takes place. I think in terms of animation, this and Toy Story 4 both came out in 2019, and they're two films that I remember seeing in theaters and going, oh my God, like in terms of texture, in terms of lighting, like it just seemed like such a step up in Disney 3D animation.
Toy Story 4 is pointless, but it looks good. Yeah,
when you compare it to Toy Story 3 and Frozen, it's such a big difference. And it just... I couldn't tell you what it is in terms of technology, but it's obviously very improved.
I mean, they obviously had to do. They always said that like water and fire were the two most challenging things to animate, and they do. Obviously, they've got to do all the elements, not only doing that, but doing some kind of otherworldly, unnatural things and interacting with each other, which is kind of
even just something like. When I think of the Lion King live action quote, it's like hair texture and things like that too that just look really different from 2013. It has the giant landscapes, but everybody kind of has their own musical number, which is something that I like about this movie. Talking about how it's more of a musical.
They actually let Jonathan Groff sing in this one. You know, just like you get a member of the original Hamilton cast in, and you don't let him sing in the first film.
The musical number where Kristoff is talking about like, oh, I just want to marry Anna, and I love her, and it's like a music video. It's so surreal that they've completely changed what the surreal space even means for Mulan, because they have like Kristoff's here and then he's over here and then he's also here, and it's silly,
rap battles of history style.
I was thinking like pop music video style. Like it's so fun, and definitely a change from like what the even 2013 musical numbers were like, which were much more grounded.
It's more kind of an actual musical, if that makes sense. In kind of musical numbers where logic goes out the window rather than them just being there and singing as they go along, if that makes sense.
Yes, and in the end, it takes Anna and Elsa together. They're described on the Disney Princess fandom wiki as the deuteragonists, and I guess that is fair. I don't know if I could say one is more the protagonist than the other, and in both films it takes two, baby, but especially here where Anna has to like get the earth giants to go throw rocks at the dam to destroy it, and then Elsa needs to create an ice wall to stop the waves from destroying Arendelle. And also
plots and plans, it's Helm's Deep all over again.
I don't get how like, oh hey, indigenous people, we're gonna build you a dam. Just immediately from hearing that, I was like, how is that the good guy thing to do? That just doesn't seem like a good guy thing in general.
It's not.
Yeah. And
I come from a part of the world where several reservoirs have been created, essentially, and cities have been drowned in order to create those reservoirs in order to get water to England. Genuinely. And where I live now, the village essentially only got saved from that by the fact it has a chapel of historical cultural significance in it, so they couldn't do it. So in an alternate universe where I could be sitting could have been flooded essentially in the middle of Wales to give water to England. So dams being created is not always good for the locale.
No.
I am living evidence of that.
there's the divide between the sort of urban centers and the more natural spaces where Arendelle, everybody has plenty and everybody has a great life, and they have a whole song about how awesome it is to live in Arendelle and nothing is ever going to change. And then you go off to the other place that's like, yeah, no, actually your king really screwed us over and we're more connected with nature. And yeah, it's lazy, it's tropey. But like, yeah, it does show an actual way in which this is an American film, the way in which the American government is still affecting the natural resources of like our indigenous population. And I don't think it's trying to necessarily get into that, but it does reflect it in a very simplistic way. And
ironic for Disney.
Yeah. And I don't remember what else I had to say. Like it's good, but I still think I prefer the first one. I just think the songs are catchier and more fun.
I mean, of the more recent, like, and kind of quotes, kind of Disney princess kind of movies, I think I agree with Kira. I think probably Tangle's my favorite, then probably Moana, then Frozen, which I do like, but I wasn't blown away by, like, like a lot of people. I think it's good, and this one, yes, it's a decent enough sequel, I suppose. Just like I watched Moana 2 on Disney Plus last week, and again, it's fine. There's not much wrong with it. Probably not going to watch it again, but
I really like Moana 2.
I haven't seen. I've seen Tangled. I've seen the two Frozens. I've seen Moana. I haven't seen things like Raya and the Last Dragon. I haven't seen Encanto and all the kind of other Disney kind of with human characters that are coming out.
Yeah.
I'll say that Turning Red was fun.
I will put Moana 2 over Frozen 2 at a minimum. Like I
would agree with that. Yeah. Speaking of just quickly before we can wrap up, technical innovations. We've mentioned how kind of animation's kind of leapt forward, got some key points throughout the history of Disney. The main, obviously, Tangled was the one that kind of kicks off like this latest batch of 3D animated films. The main innovation of that apparently was that that was the first film in history where an animated character, you could lip read what they were saying if you muted the film. Like a trained lip reader could.
So all the phonetics
was sophisticated enough to actually do that, and Rapunzel was the first character you could do that with, apparently. So
yeah, you can't do that on South Park. Their mouths have like very 4 or 5 defined shapes.
Yeah.
And in the nicest way, I don't think you can do it to Wallace and Gromit either. I mean, the fact that one of them doesn't speak is irrelevant.
Well, then you always know what he's saying.
Exactly. The whole thing is what he's saying, even though he doesn't say anything.
Yeah. I mean, Frozen 2 is good, and it technologically, in terms of like how it looks, obviously,
it's impressive.
It's impressive. It's a step forward.
And I'm sure that water horse kind of sold a lot of extra toys.
Yeah.
So what we've essentially decided after 2 hours is that yay for the animators and their sheer genius and the amount of blood, sweat, and tears and hours and missed family dinners and funerals and all that kind of thing that they've done to practice their craft. The faults are of the writers.
Well, I think animators and voice actors, sometimes boo writers, and definitely boo producers and merchandisers.
I wouldn't.
This sounds like my review for Avatar 2 that I did a few years ago.
I wouldn't boo the writers necessarily here. Like, it's not bad. It's just like this is a 6.5 instead of an 8.
I think I think they're in that, very much in that Disney mold, and they're just like Cinderella. Cinderella kind of ate Snow White to an extent. I think all the recent Disney films, there's a kind of story they tell, and they tell it again because it's successful and it still makes money. So,
well, you know the reason for that, don't you?
They don't want to rock the boat too much.
You know the reason why they're all roughly the same, or one of the reasons. So everyone knows
money.
Everyone knows of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, right? Everyone's had to study that at a certain point. For those who don't know it,
it's just that there are only 3 stories.
Yeah.
No. Christopher Vogler was a film producer, and he essentially took Joseph Campbell's theory of the hero's journey, which anybody that does anything to do with film or writing will come across, and he went and essentially made almost like a 5, 6, 7 page brochure booklet kind of simple version and gave it out to all his writing staff. So essentially, like, if in doubt, go back to this. It's not going to be incredible, but the story will work. Apparently, Disney found it and went, "Can we have 1,000 copies, please?" of your condensed version. We'll pay you for it, but you do all the work. Can we have your simple version, The Hero's Journey? And gave it to all their writing staff. So this is in the 90s, I think. But yeah, at one point, Disney literally were singing off the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
And it's all The Hero's Journey. It's amazing.
The other thing about this film compared to the other two that we've discussed is it does have a female writer, a female co-director, and she was one of the story outliners too. So we're actually getting women involved in making these films, primarily targeted at little girls and families. So
and I will say that I did see online that Jennifer Lee, who was one of the co-directors, if you class her straight as a director and not having to class her as a co-director, she, although people were saying, you know, yay for Greta Gerwig for being the first solo female director to make over $1 billion, Jennifer Lee was the first female director to direct 2 films over 1 billion. Yes, it was co-directing, but with a director credit.
Guided a lot by production, like Sam mentioned, because that's Disney.
But we should give the shout out to Jennifer Lee for that achievement, because nobody else has done it yet.
Yep.
Do you know she married Alfred Molina during the production of this film?
Nice. Cool.
So a Disney director is married to a Disney villain.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, that sounds about right.
All right. Well, that's all I have on Frozen 2. Do we have any final thoughts on Disney princesses? Or unofficial or official?
A lot of them are interesting characters. A lot of them are products of their time.
Yeah,
they're all there to make money.
I was going to say some of them are better than others. Some of them are more feminist than others. I think we shouldn't judge something like Snow White and her characterization too harshly compared to what it is now. But I also think if you made that film exactly with that characterization now, you should judge it harshly. Is how I would view that. Yes, there are criticisms, things like that. Times change, and we can argue against things to a certain extent, but we also do have to take certain things into account. And I know that Disney princesses are a bit like Bond girls, in that it's kind of, if you want to find a topic for kind of slightly easy feminist criticism attack, pick one of the two. You're going to have enough. And you can kind of go all in on them. There are good points and there are bad points, but again, like we said, the reason they keep getting pumped out, and also, if people didn't respond to them or like them, they wouldn't keep buying the tickets to see the films. So there has to be some connection with a young audience, and perhaps especially a young female audience, regardless of if you think they show bad stereotypes or things like that. There must be.
I don't think many little girls today are buying tickets to Snow White, but yeah.
Yeah, but the Disney princess idea is still going. As a concept of becoming a princess in a kind of fantasy world and marrying a handsome prince.
It's the Easter holidays in a couple of weeks. I think Snow White will do all right.
Yeah, Mufasa will be back. Probably Moana too as well. So yeah, it's an interesting ground for discussion, and I think there are arguments one way or the other. And as much as I dislike Disney as the kind of corporate monopolizing enterprise demon that it is, sometimes there are just films that you have to go, you know what? Take the hat off to him. It's good.
That's my big takeaway is, this is all a brand. Apparently Disney Princess as an idea did not even exist until the late 90s, early 2000s. So, I hate the corporatization of fun. Although, I mean, that has existed for forever.
Yes. Yeah, the corporatization side is bad, but at a certain point, like, probably if I have to rank these three, I'd put Frozen 2 at the bottom, probably Snow White in the middle and Mulan at the top out of the three of them.
It would
Yeah,
it would be
I'll go
it would be a close thing between me for Snow White and Mulan for the top spot. I think I probably got more affection for Mulan because I grew up with it. You know, I was the right age for it. But Snow White's still just so technically impressive even now. So
Snow White is
credit.
the groundbreaking film, but I think Mulan is the better film.
Yeah,
I could go
Frozen
my
by contemporary standards.
and Frozen 2 is fine.
I could go my whole life.
Frozen 2 is also a movie.
For all the impressiveness, I could go my whole life never watching Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs again and be okay.
Oh yeah,
it is what it is. I realized I haven't seen it since I was a very small child. That's what I was like, oh, okay, I do remember that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for watching our Disney Princess episode. We'll be back next week with something else. But until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me as SSP Thinks Film and at the Second Cut Substack, where you can read my 75th anniversary review of Cinderella. And back on the film magazine, if you want to search out my older work, I did quite a bit on Disney. So I ranked the Renaissance Disney films. I did reviews of several films. I did the Mulan and the Mulan remake. I think I did Hunchback, and I think I did another one. Can't remember. I think I did. Actually, I did do Snow White as well. Yeah, that'd be the other one. So
did we do a ranking of all the Pixar movies?
Yes, we did do that as well. Yes, so yeah, that was like a team project. Yeah, so yeah, that's up there as well. If you want more of your Disney content.
I am judgmental in the various places. Hopefully you don't find me. I don't think I've written anything specifically Disney related because I try and not give too much money to them. I guess in terms of animation and kind of craftsmanship like that, I did do again a review of Avatar 2. The third one will be coming out at some point, which I'm sure I'll have to subject myself to. Just to say I've completed
it. If you want to reserve that one for review now, Kieran, knock yourself out.
Oh, I'll take the bullet. The very long, slow, painful 3+ hour bullet.
This one's got David Thewlis in it, so if you see one of the Na'vi, it sounds a bit Scouse. That's David Thewlis.
Or turns into a werewolf.
Yeah.
And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. My Disney Princess article recommendation is go read my Last Jedi review at the Film Magazine. It has Rey, who is Emperor Palpatine's daughter, and it has Princess Leia, who is a princess.
Yeah, I think Rey is arguable for the Disney princess.
Is she Palpatine's daughter or granddaughter? I can't remember, and it doesn't matter.
Granddaughter.
It's all stupid that they did that. But anyway, you can also find us at Second Cut Pod. Emails at secondcutpod@gmail.com. It's all that everywhere. And yeah, that's it. Also, you can read the Film Magazine until 2030. Joe says that our reading is actually going pretty steady for not having published anything for 3 months and officially being closed. So love that. Joe, thank you for listening. And
go check out the archives.
Yes. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Adios.
Goodbye.